Hi everyone, welcome to today's edition of Tech Tuesday by Full Sail University. Today we're going to have a very exciting discussion about the future of tech, the technology trends that will change everything. I am Luis Garcia, Vice President of Emerging Technologies at Full Sail University, and today we have an awesome panel of Full Sail University graduates, and we have Mr. Shaun McCabe, Head of Technology at Insomniac Games. And actually, I have pictures, so I'm gonna show you that. Um, and we have Ms. Cordy Rierson, Vice President of Production of Skybound Entertainment, and Mr. Joe Venters, that just joined us, thank God, and uh, Senior Interaction Designer at Google Nest. All of them full-stack graduates and with great experience in technology. Um, So with that, I'm going to go one by one and ask him about where you're from and what you're currently working on. And we'll start with you, Mr. Shaun McCabe.
All right. I am from Insomniac Games. I've been with Insomniac for about 16 years, graduated from Full Sail in 2001. In my role as head of technology, I lead a team of engineers and IT professionals, technical artists, and really at a high level, what we look to do is to find ways that technology can be used to erase the gaps that exist between ideas and products. If you just imagine we have all these brilliant and talented people and they want to do these amazing things. Technology is the way that we do that. What we are working on right now, we actually just announced on Thursday. We announced 2 titles for the PlayStation 5. The first is Spider-Man Miles Morales, which expands the story that we started with Marvel Spider-Man and focuses on the Miles Morales character in a standalone adventure. And the other is a Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, which is a continuation of the long-running Ratchet & Clank franchise.
All right, thank you, Shaun. We'll go to Ms. Cordy Rierson, Vice President of Production at Skybound Entertainment. Go ahead, Cordy.
Hey everybody, Shaun, I'm so excited about Ratchet and Clank. I am a big fan of that title, so I look forward to it coming out. My name is Cordy. I am the current Vice President of Production at Skybound Entertainment. And at Skybound Entertainment, we are a creator-centric company focused on delivering digital content and storytelling across film, television, interactive, and emergent technologies. And we also have a physical side to us as well, where we produce tabletop games, books, comic books, and merchandise. So we kind of dabble across the creative realm and different ways that we can get creative content to people and fans. And we use technology as a way to elevate our ability to storytell. So we look for different types of technology and ways that we can utilize the platforms and the features to showcase a creative's vision and their story in the best light possible.
Thank you, Cordy. And Mr. Joe Venters, Senior Interaction Designer at Google Nest. I'm very excited to have you, Joe.
Yeah, Luis, thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to just, get some perspective and share a little bit of my perspective. My name is Joe Venters. I'm a Senior Interaction Designer on all things Nest camera. And the product area I'm under is Google Nest. A lot of you guys may or may not be familiar, but it's a consumer-facing product suite. And what we're trying to do at Nest is just enable our customers to live an easier, more thoughtful life and provide them with convenience through products and services. And I'm really particularly excited about this chat because I work on the camera vertical and the camera product. And if you guys have any insight into how cameras work, yeah, they're great at providing you with visual information, but they are literally the eyes to the home, and they're really extremely powerful sensors within the home. So I think that there's a lot to look forward to in the future regarding AI, machine learning, and we really just are looking forward to the future and want to provide customers with design products that behoove everybody and not just the small minority. And I'm happy to be here.
That's so awesome. It's a very diverse panel with probably a million years of experience in technology here, so super cool. So thank you everyone for their introductions. We'll go over some questions first. In the first 30 minutes, I have some prepared questions. And for you, the audience, as you are interacting in the Facebook community, you can start sending your questions, and our team will feed those to us, and we're going to be answering your questions in the second half of today. So let's dive right in. So we have had a few sessions of Tech Tuesday. I think this is number 5, and I always ask the panelists to tell me about a technology that is exciting for the future, and 100% of the time we hear these things. We hear artificial intelligence, we hear AR, VR, MR, and every single time. So we also are in a very different world today. You know, it's been, I count the weeks, I think 15 weeks since we started remote working, and that has brought a lot of change into the world of technology companies and gaming companies. So we'll have those 3 trends: artificial intelligence, extended reality, and remote working to talk about today. So let's just start with artificial intelligence. And I'll start with you, Cordy. How does the advent of AI change your industry? And give us some examples. And how do you see AI transform life as we know it?
Wow. Well, first I want to say I am a Google Nest user. So kudos to you, Joe. It's awesome. It's certainly made my life easier. I have a robot that vacuums for me, and it talks to my lights, and it talks to my TV and my refrigerator. So I'm a huge tech geek and tech junkie. And when it comes to artificial intelligence, I think that machine learning is an advancement that some people, you can see it in a multitude of ways. Machine learning is an opportunity that enables us to progress further and quicker with immediate answers or information at our fingertips. A lot of people, you get worried. You hear a lot about, oh my God, it's Terminator, it's Skynet, it's going to be, the robots are taking over. But we just have to remind ourselves that we, as the humans who create this technology, are always in the driver's seat. And we have the ability to use that data for good and to program things for good that help people, especially people who may not have access to the same things that we do in our locations. And through artificial intelligence, we can, push the boundaries as far as how we're able to assist people, be it in-home living or in-home circumstances, or maybe they don't have the ability to get out or the ability to maneuver around the world as most people do. So I see the advancements in that area continuing to really help, particularly in healthcare. I think there's, when we look at, we have the largest population of seniors living on our planet right now. Things can get very complicated with medicine and doctor's appointments and things of that nature. And artificial intelligence is really leading a path there with helping those people, by providing them reminders and helping them understand their dosages and helping them understand when they have to do things and by when, so they can live, a quality life as they move on into their later years. So that's one of the things I like.
That's super cool, Cordy. And Shaun, I'll continue with you. How does AI have changed your industry? And well, AI has always been in gaming, but give us some examples that people may not know. And how do you see artificial intelligence transforming life as we know it?
I think one of the biggest things that AI is helping us with right now is meet players, consumers' demands for more high-res content. We've generally seen a doubling of production budgets as we proceed through console generations. And it just means when you have all these beautiful pixels, when you're running everything in 4K, when you have these amazing GPUs, people want things to look good. But it isn't just about the horsepower of the platform. It's the ability of content creators to generate this extremely high-res content. And that content could be mocap, performance capture for actors, could be environment assets, could be all kinds of things. Machine learning is a godsend because the truth is we can't keep doubling budgets. The more we double these budgets, the more risky these AAA ventures get, and the more you have to sell every single time. And so we've been investing pretty significantly in ways that machine learning can help us do that. That could be procedural generation. We heavily leaned on procedural generation for Marvel Spider-Man, the version of New York City of Manhattan that we realized in that game. It's enormous and it looks incredible. And it was made with 12 environment artists primarily. And one of the big reasons is the investment in procedural generation. We see the same thing in mocap cleanup for performance capture. We work with 3 lateral and cubic motion to do that. And they do a lot of work with machine learning just to accelerate creating high-res content for consumers. I think this is only going to increase as we go on. I think that a lot of people, where previously I think outsourcing was the big way that we solved this problem. I think on these coming generations, we're going to see a lot more investment in artificial intelligence to help meet that demand.
Thank you, Shaun. That's really cool, those examples that you just gave about the last game. Joe, how does AI have changed your industry, and how do you see changing life as we know it?
Loaded question, but I would suggest that, IoT and, for lack of a better term, smart home, its foundation is artificial intelligence, right? It's all about prediction, routines, behaviors. And right now we're just in our infancy. I've been with Nest for over 6 years, coming up on 7 years now. And been working in the camera space for the majority of my time. And I can tell you guys, and as a lot of you guys know that have had a little, opportunity, maybe some disposable income to get into IoT early, it has come leaps and bounds at its accuracy, at the way it sort of perceives the world around it. And I'm just really excited about that perpetuation and seeing like how far we come in the next 5 years or 4 years. But I think for me, it's really all about having some accountability to our customers, because as you guys are all aware, there's tons of, sort of varying opinions regarding how we're using algorithms to keep people engaged on social media, for example, or, keep them sort of sucked in. And what we're doing at Nest is really trying to find the edges of how we can really make life better for people. And one way that we've started to kind of scratch the surface is, I think echoing what Cordy had suggested, it's all about accessibility and helping those that maybe can't help themselves, whether, in the smart home space, to be disabled and to be able to have, an algorithm and, a piece of hardware, turn on the lights or open the door or unlock the door, or, have your camera tell you what it sees verbally, even if you can't see it, and be predictive and really proactive about, telling you information that you need to know rather than just a bunch of noise. So yeah, I think it's really just kind of up to us as the designers, and especially you young folks that may still be at Full Sail or still maybe in school, to really kind of, whatever industry you go into, I think it's gonna be important to like really hold yourself accountable to the end user, the end customer, and really make sure that you're building something that you'd be proud to not only to build, but something you'd actually want to use, and it would better the world around you. Because I can see it right now going, there's going to be pros and cons to AI, to machine learning. It's going to get scary quick, but it's up to us to kind of set some principles. I'm going on a tangent here, but I'm excited about it. We're in our infancy, man. It's going to get crazy. It's going to get wild.
Thank you so much. Actually, I love those examples. It's interesting. AI has been in development for over 30 years. So when I went to college, if we wanted a neural network to do anything, we'll start the training process and we'll go take off for the weekend and come back, next week and say, maybe you got trained. And now all that is, within these devices that are $50 or even less. And getting to its peak of usability is what it gets really excited from now on, now that the technology is at its peak. The same thing happened with virtual reality and augmented reality and mixed reality, and for those that have used Magic Leap spatial computing, as they called it, and technology being in development for a very long time. When I went to Full Sail in '95, I took a VR class, and we did some really cool stuff back then with it. And then it kind of went away for a long time, and it came back the last few years, and now it seems that it's here to stay, and it has tremendous applications, especially as the price of using the technology continues to drop and the quality continues to increase. I'll start with Shaun because I know he has a lot of experience in this. So that's Cordy, but I'll inverse the order. How has extended reality changed your industry, and how do you see it transforming life as we know it?
I think with XR technology, at least for my industry, for consumer-facing content, we haven't seen anything big yet. And I think a lot of that is just due to the value proposition of the devices. It doesn't add up. I think, for example, like it occurred to me that I have I have an iPhone 11 Pro Max. They just keep adding nouns to the end of it. I think that's what I have. And I'm pretty sure it costs $1,100, which is a lot more than my work laptop that I'm looking at right here. And so clearly we're willing to spend a lot of money on devices, significant amounts of money. The problem is the phone that I have is invaluable at this point. It does so many extraordinary things. When you contrast that to the mixed reality devices, the consumer-facing mixed reality devices, they have the high price point, but they just don't have the utility. And so I think that the value proposition for consumers isn't going to be there yet. I'm very, very interested to see what Apple does if they release a XR product that's a add-on or a complementary, similar to the way the Apple Watch is complementary to the iPhone. I think that can get the price point down. They can get this thing under $1,000, maybe $799. I could see, just the kind of market liquidity that you need for people actually to do serious challenge that we run into now is that the market is so incredibly small. Everything that you do is an experiment. There's no market-driven annealing. We don't actually know what works in mixed reality at this point because there's no market for it. I do think it's really smart to see a lot of folks that are in this space focus on B2B application, business and enterprise application, because they can afford it. The value proposition is there. You don't need massive liquidity the way you need for consumer-facing things. And so I think that Magic Leap's recent pivot from several months ago, I know that Microsoft has been in this direction for quite a long time. Makes a lot of sense to me because it'll let the technology mature, to the point where they can fix the value proposition. Once that happens, though, I do think it's inevitable that these devices and experiences are going to be ubiquitous and the primary means for interacting with the world. Was I muted? No, I'm kidding.
No,
sorry. I had to make that joke once.
That would have been funny.
You want me to start at the top?
No, I would have told you were muted. And Joe, you want to take a stab at this one? How do you see XR changing your industry, and how do you see changing life as we know it?
Oh man, yeah, I think I'll kind of echo some of Shaun's sentiment here. Like, it's all about approachability, in my opinion, and saturation. So, although that will quickly change, I'd imagine this stuff will just be bundled and baked in with whatever your personal device is before you know it. And in which case, yeah, even then, as it's more readily available, I think the biggest benefit is going to be task-oriented sort of mechanisms and interactions. I think it's going to be all about, even for us at Nest, I think one of our biggest hurdles is sort of that initial impression that the customers will get when they buy a product. They spend a lot of money on a quality product. They get it home and they want to set it up. Obviously, you get a new toy, we all want to get home and set it up. So I think it's going to be interesting how we can kind of educate people on even how to install devices, whether that's through, even XR or even VR, AR, there's, but I think, yeah, the true benefit is going to be that sort of, it needs to feel organic. It needs to feel like very approachable and provide me immediate benefit. So, but you can foresee so many use cases for that. I mean, it's endless, but Yeah, again, I think it's all going to kind of multiply with everything else. Mobile, in the past it was out of reach for a lot of people not that long ago, and now it's just like a baseline situation. It was all web based, and so I think this is the next revolution. It's going to be all about AI, and that will include the next sort of tangents for technologies such as XR, AR, VR. So who knows? Who knows where it's gonna land? But I'm excited about it personally.
That's great. Cordy, I know you don't work a lot in XR, and so I'm very eager to hear your thoughts about XR today, and how do you see changing life as we know it?
Well, this is one of my most passionate topics, and I know Shaun and I have geeked out on this before. So I was fortunate to, spend 10 years at Microsoft, where, we began that journey, and starting with, Xbox and first party, and looking at the development of the Kinect, and looking at the failures and the successes in Kinect, and taking the successes and harnessing those and building on top of those to prototype and develop and release the HoloLens, which was, a journey that I feel so fortunate to have been able to be on and be part of. Basically pioneering what mixed reality can do, and what it can do, as Shaun said, in the B2B space. And with AI, as Joe is talking about, when you combine mixed reality and artificial intelligence, you are wielding the world's most powerful workstation. I mean, the tool set is phenomenal. The things that you can combine, the things that you can achieve, and I'm not just talking about like building cars, but and how they do film. You look at game engines right now; they are building units with this idea of a mixed reality or XR space in mind, that is we're building movies now inside of game engines as a result of combining these different types of technology together. um, well, I can't think of anything bad to say about it at all, because I'm just such a geek about it. But it's when I think about Case Western, like all of their classes, especially now, look at the time that we're in, where you need these kind of virtual or mixed reality training environments to continue on with your education. How else are you going to practice surgery? You know, and when I think about, look at what we're doing right now. I mean, it's soon, like, even though it's been a very tough time on the world in general, I always think about what kind of technical innovation is going to come out of the results of this. And part of this is this global connection. And we were laughing before, getting started is like, oh my gosh, so many different video conferencing tools. Those video conferencing tools are a breath away from integrating XR and mixed reality. And we're already seeing it with backdrops, right? Like, people get to choose their curvy new backdrops. And then soon people are going to be reaching into your space, or you're going to be going into their space, and it's all going to feel as one. And I think that this is going to be ubiquitous in the next 10 years. Like, we are, our society is trending where we now have, the millennials and Generation Z, who are essentially digital natives. They've grown up in digital. They are very comfortable with it. It is going to be a very natural extension and tool set for them as they, continue on in the work world, or even enter the work world, to utilize these things to do their work. And I'm hoping that we see, and I do think Apple's a dark horse here. They haven't revealed a lot about what they have going on, but I feel like from a social or community level, I'm kind of looking into them to see if they break into that kind of direct consumer market. I know that Google, recently released their, they have developer kits out now again. They're going back to it, and I think they're being very slow and measured in how they approach that. And so the companies, if you look at the Fortune 500 companies out there, everybody's investing in this space because they all believe in it and they all know it's going to be the future. And so it's just a matter of time to see how this all just keeps coming out. I'm very excited for it.
Thank you, Cordy. That's actually a great segue to the next trend. So we cover a little bit of artificial intelligence, and we cover right now extended reality. But the other trend that is happening as we speak, as you mentioned, Cordy, is remote working. So everyone had to all of a sudden adopt remote working, but now the technology industry is doubling down on it, and we're at the very beginning of it, right? As you guys are saying, and we're using video, and we're starting to realize that video doesn't replace all forms of communication, and we get people talk about Zoom fatigue, and they miss the social contact, and but at the same time, a lot of people feel that they're being more productive, and they get to spend more time at home with their loved ones, and so some companies have said, you know what, this seems to be working fine with us, so let's continue doing it. So this is only possible because of where we are with technology. Otherwise, all of our businesses, a lot of life as we know it, even though it has changed, a lot of life as we know it stayed because technology made it possible. So how do you see remote working changing or evolving? And I'll start with you, Cordy, because you were there in a very good role and of mixing the Zoom with extended reality, and love to hear more about how do you see that future.
Well, I think that we're going to see a blend of these different technologies kind of enter this space, and I want to talk just a minute about how. Because best speaking from personal experience, and we are all experiencing some level of this communication due to the state of our world right now. And I think, we are so very fortunate to work in an industry that is digitally able and digitally aware. There are many people that still can't. Right? Like based on the type of work that they do. If you are in charge or you drive or are responsible for city transportation, there's not a lot of, there isn't an opportunity right now for that to be influenced. And so if I could wave a magic wand, it would be to how do we progress into those territories now for people that have not been able to find a good utilization for digital. And, whether that be, and I think that we are seeing some of that. Like you look at farming, for example, farming is adapting and adopting, and there is a lot of digital content used. For me, I actually will say over the last, I think you said 15 weeks, I have lost count of time, but for me, I have been able to rearrange my day and prioritize things that have actually allowed me to feel more globally connected. As a matter of fact, when I did a kickoff with my team this morning, me and my head of creative, we were laughing because we were like, hey, I think, Shaun and I were like, hey, we think we traveled around the world yesterday. And we did. We started in Russia, and then we were in Germany, and then we were in China. So we really, have been able to connect by just changing our schedules a little bit. And by being home, the very nature of that flexibility has increased, right? So if I need to have my calls at, from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. with a variety of different countries, I can do that. But I can also be at home and take back some portion of the day for myself. Like if the middle of the day is more quiet, awesome. I go and get all my stuff done then, I'll go and, running or whatever I need to do. And then if I need to get back on for, at China at 10 a.m. in the morning, at 6 o'clock at night, then I can do that. So I actually think we've seen a level of flexibility that has enabled me to be more connected and have the freedom to do that connection. And I also think it's the same for talent, for jobs, because of where we are. I think it's expanded the job market, right? And it's expanded your talent pool. I don't have to look for people that are local to Los Angeles or local to the state of California, because people are worried about, oh, well, we got to relocate so-and-so, and, relocation packages are expensive. And it's like, I don't care where you live now. I don't care where you live or where you want to be. If you can still contribute at that same value, it's just opened up the talent pool exponentially.
Those are awesome examples. Thank you. Thank you so much, Cordy. Joe, how do you see remote working changing or evolving?
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting transition for all of us. And I honestly, I'm a little biased toward camera technologies, but I can really see a huge investment kind of heading into sort of just compression in general. But even for the sake of this conversation, just how can we, streaming bitrate quality, right? I think there's going to be a huge investment in trying to just compress data, get that more, accessible to all the more people that are currently online all the time. So yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting to see how all of that unfolds. But for me, working from home with I've got 3 kids. I just had a new one. My daughter was born about 5 months ago, so we're still adjusting to that. But balance is so important when working from home, and I collaboration is great, and I think there's definitely going to be investment into that space. But I think those tools and services that can actually probably leverage machine learning, artificial intelligence, the sensors around your home to say, hey, proactively, either you've been working too much, or hey, maybe you've got a presentation coming up. Here's a sort of a soft nudge. Maybe it's time to get back to work. So I think that's going to be a really cool endeavor, just to figure out how we can approach working from home from a time management perspective. I think that's going to be just huge. And there are already companies that are working to solve this, but I think it's going to be amplified. And I think investors are going to start to turn their heads a little bit towards that space now. So I think it's even Zoom, you can see how much they've their user base quadrupled overnight. And I can't imagine what they're going through right now. And they're going to need more resources, more funds. And if you got a little extra cash, I might suggest in remote collaborative products, throw some cash that way. But yeah. I think it's going to be it's going to be all about getting information to people in a seamless fashion. And how do we do that?
Thank you, Joe. And Shaun, how do you see remote working evolving? I imagine you guys having two locations already was perhaps a culture of remote working already in your studio?
I do. We have 2 studios. We're based in Burbank, which is right outside of Los Angeles. We have another studio where I'm based in Durham, North Carolina. And I think that the prospect of taking a company that had 4 remote workers and turning that into over 300 in less than a week, it's terrifying. It's bonkers. And I think one of the things that did make it happen, as you said, is we already had multiple offices. And so we had over the years invested a lot in not making any person base their value on their location, that it was more just about their contribution. And so we were fortunate, and it helped, and we're only getting better at it now. It is amazing to see Insomniac full speed ahead, on the titles that we're doing, despite the fact that everybody's working from home. I think the work from home needs to be evaluated in the context of the history of computing. And by that, I mean, we've taken a very interesting journey back to where we started. In the beginning, they say this, in the beginning, there was the terminal. You had a screen, you had a keyboard. You didn't have a PC. You were connected to a central mainframe, and you shared it with others. Over time, going into the 70s, this personal computer thing became cool, and we all had these computers on our desks. But, starting in the early 2000s, so much of what makes applications interesting, especially true in mobile, is this shared computing resource that we have out there in the cloud. And right now we're on Zoom. We're also streaming through Facebook Live. That's not made possible because of somebody's device that they're holding in their hand or have on their desk. That's made possible because of these computing resources. And so this underlying concept that you can use an application like Zoom on your phone, on your laptop, on a PC, on your tablet, you can do it at home, you can be wired. It just requires an internet connection. It suddenly invites so much more participation, which Cordy mentioned earlier. The thing that I think is making this work from home moment possible is that we just have conveniently come right back to where we started, where devices are going to become dumber and dumber. The thing that, and which is good, because the dumber a device gets, the cheaper it is, the more people, the more participation you can have out there. When I look to the future of remote work, I think the most exciting technology to me is application streaming. It's something that we're looking at right now. I know that Sony Pictures Animation is 100% terminal based, which means you log, from any device, you log into a central server, and then you can access the full suite of development applications. We're exploring the same thing. A lot of people are. And what that will enable is where you are becomes more about your comfort level, your ability to be productive. If you do have a family and working from home makes it nice. I personally love the fact that when I go downstairs to get a cup of coffee, I'll run into my daughter. That never happened before. And so it's a really exciting thing that's happening now. But I think the thing that underpins it, the thing that makes it possible, is just returning to this concept where computing resources are commoditized. They exist elsewhere. We just have these devices, these manifold devices that can connect to it in a variety of different ways and give us, the same level of experience.
Thank you, Shaun. I always think about that concept of server versus terminal, because over the history of technology, we have gone back and forth with that concept. If something becomes very expensive in resources, you centralize it, and then you call it server, whatever it is, and then you make a dumb terminal. But then things become very complicated to be centralized. You start pushing some technology to the client, and then that becomes client server, enable computing, and now it's they call edge computing, but it's all the same principle. Yeah. And you go to the server because that's the big computer, and then the terminal computer becomes smarter, cheaper, so you can push some processing there, and then that becomes too much, and then it gets back to the server, but this process gets us to do more and more and more. And
well, if you figure, just to add quickly onto that,
yeah.
When I think about my iPhone 11 Pro Max, who could ever remember that? Sorry. When I think about it, what it is it's the most beautiful and effortless and delightful way to interact with data versus having to enter commands into a Unix terminal.
It's the most elegant supercomputer.
It is.
So we are right about halftime through, and we have some great questions. And I'm going to perhaps let you guys choose, because the first one comes from Joshua, and it's not a topic we had discussed, but I'd love to hear your whoever wants to answer it. Is cryptocurrency or the integration of blockchain in any of your radar as a useful technology in your industry?
I could feel that and just say no.
Okay.
It's not something that I'm aware of right now. I think it's an extraordinary, amazing technology, but when you get into like cryptocurrency, cryptocurrency is primarily a spectator market, and we're more interested in stable currencies. So not there yet for us.
Yeah, I think for the financial industry, it's quite interesting.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, I tend to stray away from things that sort of over my head. I'll stick to stocks and paper money.
Well, I will actually throw my answer in there, and because in my role, I have to be looking at all technologies to see something that we want to apply to higher education, our products and our programs at Full Sail, and the underlying technology of blockchain is quite interesting and solves a very big problem, which is how do you transfer value from one person to another when they don't know each other. And there's a particular application to education that is interesting, which is credential acknowledging. And when somebody gets some credit from one particular university, then how does the university ecosystem get to accept that particular credential as knowledge? And obviously it requires all universities to get in the same blockchain, so it's probably very difficult to implement, but it will solve a very big problem, because for students to transfer credits from one university to another always becomes a nightmare. And so blockchain could be a way to solve that particular problem. All right. So
there's something I did think. I think especially when in the ubiquitous future that we've discussed earlier about XR, I think when digital objects have value, unique digital objects have value, I think that blockchain will become incredibly important in mutually acknowledging that value. I just don't think we're there quite yet.
Half-Life comes to mind.
Yeah.
Half-Life, yeah.
So somebody's asking if are we at the tipping point of accepting remote working, or do you think that everybody just at some point go back to work and everything is normal?
I can just jump in here. I know, coming from sort of a major company like Google, that's definitely top of mind for a lot of people. And I think working at these companies offer a lot of great benefit, but that comes at a great cost, right? Like a lot of you have to move to somewhere where the cost of living is extremely high. So, I think for me, I was able to kind of poke the bear enough to let me I do a little bit of remote working. The majority of our team is in the Bay Area and some in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm located outside of Seattle. But I think right now it's extremely early. So I think I applaud the companies that have already started to take a stance on giving it a shot. And I think that's going to be a trend that will likely increase. I also think it's going to be, if we can embrace it and solve the issues, the benefits to infrastructure and shared renewable spaces to open up, and just the impact it has on the environment is extremely, it's huge. As you guys have already seen, there's all these memes about LA. Shaun, you might be able to speak to this, but it's like the clearest it's been in like years. Like, people can't believe it. They can see the skyline. It's but for me, the bottom line, I think it's inevitable that a portion of the workforce will move to full remote. And then I think there's that middle ground of folks that will move to maybe working from hubs. So, working, maybe you're in the suburbs somewhere, but these companies can afford to provide sort of remote workspaces and more grounded collaborative atmospheres where people can kind of come in a few days a week. I think it's also extremely interesting to maybe benefit these local economies and other economies that may not have that tech dollar in their town. It's going to be really great to kind of spread the love around and see what that does for all those wonderful people and all the people that we market to, and those consumers we want to sell our products. Financially don't normally see the benefits of tech. It's usually just more of on the other end of things. So, regarding consumption.
Cordy, it seems that you guys have embraced remote working. Do you think that we're there, that it's just here to stay?
I honestly do believe that, at least for the entertainment or digital entertainment industry, that our workplace will change forever. Like, I think this is a forever moment. And that's not to say that people will not go back to the office, because I do believe people will go back to the office. Sorry, I have a giant dog. I do believe that people will go back to the office, but I believe that it will be different. I think offices will manifest themselves in different ways. We'll find different ways to, have teams that need to work together, and as Joe said, have the different days on, where maybe you're going in 2 days a week, or if you have something like, the value of being in an office is now going to be measured, as opposed to doing it because that's just the way it's been done and that's all we know. Like people are going to apply basically a KPI to it and a measurement. It's like, is this necessary? If the answer is yes and it yields us value, then this is what we do. But I do see, I see the face of that changing forever.
Yeah, thank you. I think everybody's right? And many people were afraid to try it, and now the circumstances force people to try it. So now the experiment is out. Some people say, well, now we get to measure the impact. I want to go back. We have a question here about XR. I think it's Nick. And we touched a little bit on this and how the consumer XR is something that is not really there yet, and everybody's excited about Apple and what they're gonna come up with. I've been to Apple and came close to trying to use all my backup tricks to trick them into telling me what they're gonna do in XR, and they're very well trained and they won't tell you. And but is going towards the business to business, and where everybody sees a lot of applications. Where do you see would be the first industries to adopt XR? I'll start with you, Shaun.
Oh goodness. I mean, I think Cordy mentioned this one before. I think healthcare is big because there's a lot of money in healthcare. The surgical training specifically would be one that's incredibly exciting. I have a friend who's an orthopedic surgeon, and I found out something really interesting, that most surgical training happens on cadavers. Because I was asking him, I was like, what was the first time that you had to perform surgery? I was like, do you do that in college? And he's like, there's a little bit when you're a resident, but really we worked on cadavers, and it's ridiculous. And it holds us back because we have a shortage of surgeons in the world because of surgical training. So it could open that up. I think there are a lot of applications in, anything where you want a more enriched view of space, whether that's architecture, mechanical engineering, automotive. I really just think of it as enriched space where there is interesting data about space that is pushed to you. I would think the most primitive example is, the ruler app that you have on your phone. That's an extraordinary useful thing to have versus using a tape measure. But you could extend that, into mechanical engineering spaces. Actually, I'm thinking industrial engineering. Those are off the top of my head.
Okay, Joe, do you wanna? Where do you think XR is gonna go first?
I understand. I think healthcare obviously is right there at the forefront of that. You can see the benefits. For me, I'd imagine that mixed reality there's going to need to be a cultural shift in order for us to really receive it well. I think it's not going to come overnight. And I'm not sure from a commercial perspective, but I think from the consumer perspective, if you look back at Google Glass, how that was received with such, a mixed bag of emotions and thoughts and opinions, in order to kind of get us to a place where we're using this day in and day out, where again it's primarily task oriented and benefiting our lives in the day in and day out. I think we're going to have to make sure that the product is not only affordable, but that culturally those influencers are saying, hey, this is where it's at. It's acceptable to maybe augment your reality with a device on your face, which is a huge leap. It's definitely a little odd, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. But from a commercial perspective and just industries, I would love to see, even industrial design. I think a lot of times when we're working with hardware, we're doing a lot of 3D printing. We're doing a lot of, kind of see how these independent chipsets and different mechanisms fit together and how well they can kind of, what's that going to look in the physical space. So I think, working with industrial design to see hey, how does this feel in my space? How does it feel in the average house? Even how does it interact with other devices? But it's the Wild West. I think it's wide open right now.
Cordy, what do you see? Thank you, Joe. What do you see, if it's not for consumers, where do you see XR going first?
Well, I think I was fortunate with HoloLens to see it go into these industries. We looked across, 7 primary verticals that we thought were commercially viable verticals where it would be most useful. One of those is absolutely an education with the medical field. When you look at what Case Western is doing, it's exactly what Shaun said. Cadavers are expensive, lab times are short. Once a mistake is made on a cadaver, you cannot repair it. It's done. So when you're able to take those 3D data sets and provide haptic feedback and allow somebody to practice a procedure over and over and over again before they try it on a real person. I don't know about you, it makes me feel 1,000 times better about having a procedure done, to know that those kind of hours have gone into practicing. I think the other changes we see are in like the industrial design is particularly architecture. If you look at buildings, and I'm not even talking about just a building, but when you look at civil engineers who are planning like city blocks, you're restoring an area of a city, or you're trying to make sure you're retrofitting an area of perhaps a really old city, to be able to look at those super complex data sets with a group from around the world, where you're not co-located, you are separate, looking at something together at the same time, being able to see all of it and being able to scale it and see it in 3 dimension and walk through it as if it were really there, just creates such a change in the kind of data that you can collect that informs your decision making. It helps you create faster decision making, and it's giving you perspective and context that you wouldn't have by looking at something flat or just reading numbers. And we did this with the Mars rover as well, right? Like, there were 30 scientists from around the globe that were getting together, looking at black and white data that the rover was pumping out, trying to make decisions about where it would go the following day to program it. And they had to align on that data. And everybody interprets data differently. And so there are, of course, always different opinions. But if you take that data and you turn it into the 3D geometry map of Mars itself, and the scientists, no matter where they are, can come together in avatar form or what have you, and walk around and look at what that geometry actually looks like, they're learning things that they could not see in any other way, shape, or form. So I think we will continue to see those kind of benefits pushing forward. I think that what Joe was saying earlier about, like, hey, how do we look at this to kind of benefit the consumer in the home? And will people be, are people going to be comfortable wearing something on their face that is doing things? And will society accept them for doing that? I'm all in. I'll let people throw cabbage at me if they want. But I think that, for that, the thing that needs to be showcased is where there has to be a tool set that creates inherent value to that person's day-to-day life. And so that's when we get back to the really simple things, and we see, there's stores like, Shaun talked about the ruler, and like, man, if I never have to measure how to hang a picture straight in my house again, like, hallelujah. And I think that if you, other pieces, like reminders through your home. If I look at a plant and, I like plants, but I don't keep them alive very well. And it's reminding me, it's telling me, hey, you need to water this, or water me, I'm thirsty, or, how you kind of take that technology. And IKEA, like, there's places that are creating applications for it today, and it's all over your phone and it's all over Snapchat. I mean, my daughter has introduced me to the world of Snapchat, and I too now can appear not as myself with full 3-dimensional bunny ears if I feel like it, which is whimsical, right? That's the fun, that's the social aspect, but we're missing that carve out of utilities, like utility tools, just like your junk drawer where you have your hammer and your screwdriver and your tape and you can take it out anytime. We need that digital tool set that extends and MR. That yields that inherent value in everyday life. And I think that will be the next big step.
Oh, that's a great example. Thank you, Cordy. I'll add a couple examples. One in healthcare that we been doing a full sale with Avon Health, which is one of the largest healthcare providers in the area, wanting to solve the problem of training nurses on the systems that provide medicines to patients in the hospital. And it's a actually very complicated, very expensive machine, and nurses don't get to train on them because they don't have enough to train people on them. And there are quite a lot of mistakes that are made on the hospital floor by giving the wrong medication to patients. So we co-developed a system, a VR system, to train the nurses on how to use the dispenser of medicine. The other industry that I think, Cordy, you mentioned a little bit, is filmmaking, and the way they've done a few of the latest movies, and the whole series on The Mandalorian, and where all the backgrounds were generated by the game engine, and you hear the director talking about, filming a sunset for 10 hours, and that's fine, because the sun can stay there for 10 hours, and they can even move the sun if they need to. And it just changes the game of how they do filmmaking. And then they go into the director will go into VR to find locations within the virtual world. It's just fascinating. So we're at the almost out of time, and there's a question that I always like to ask. So I'll ask every one of you, and it is about the future. And we've done a lot about that today, but if you can find any other example about technology today that gets you really excited about the future, what is it? And I'll start with you, Cordy.
The one that I would want to think about most. You start with me. Wow. I guess one that we haven't really talked about, but that sits along the cusp of everything that we're discussing, is sound. And what spatial sound and 3D sound are going to mean in complementary terms with all this technology, because we can't forget about that. It's a core part of how we communicate, and I think that there's a lot of exciting kind of incubation and prototyping that's happening in that world now. And clearly we've done a lot with our home systems. You see the advancements, everybody's got all these different sound systems that they're mixing in. And when you have a final mix, it not only has to be a mix across 7 different types of platforms, because it's got to work for how Netflix does it, and it's got to work for how Amazon does it, and it's got to work for the in-home theater, and do they have surround sound, or do they have surround bars, or and then theater's got to be a different mix, and streaming's got to be a different mix. So I think that the time is ripe, and I look forward to seeing kind of what people do in that space to innovate with sound.
Joe, is there any particular technology we haven't talked about that it gets you excited about the future? I
mean, one sort of hard technology that's sort of near and dear to my heart, is the whole battery space, how it's revolutionizing the automotive industry, and the benefits that, as a whole, if we can adopt, an alternative mode of transportation, whether that's your personal car or a vehicle that's transporting goods and services or goods to folks. So I think that there's, I'm really excited about just the advancements that have been made just as the whole Tesla revolution has come about. That the investment in those technologies and sort of how they can decrease the degradation in batteries at a long span, and I just think the overall impact that's having to the environment, to our the air we breathe, to like the disrupting the whole manufacturing of vehicles today. I think it's going to be really great to see how that unfolds.
That's great. And Shaun, what do you think? What technology we didn't talk about gets you excited about the future?
Interestingly enough, Joe, I was going to say batteries as well, but I'll say something different. I think it's real-time interactions with cloud computing. I mentioned game streaming earlier, application streaming. I think that is going to be among the most transformative technologies over the next decade. Obviously, we can stream now if it's buffered. Netflix works pretty darn well. I think that nothing is going to advance, this concept where this world where devices become less important and it's more about, the underlying platform and application than all of the things that we have to do to make real-time interactions with the cloud work. Low latency, I guess, like low latency transmission, some of the stuff that happens with 5G will help. I think, Luis, you mentioned edge computing. There are all these things that have to happen. There are like Wi-Fi standards that have to change, but that's going to change everything. It's really going to change everything, and hopefully, unlike most technologies, it's going to change them in a good way, because we're going to be conscientious about how we approach it.
Yeah, it certainly is an interesting time to be alive, because technology can play a very big role in solving the world's biggest problems, and that's what I want to leave everybody with, is think about joining the world of technology. It's not only fun, but there's so much to be done. There's so many problems to solve, important problems too. And I want to thank Cordy and Shaun and Joe for joining us today for this great conversation. This is going to live in the Full Sail Facebook page if you want to come back and listen to it again. And I want to invite everyone for 2 weeks from now. We're going to have another Tech Tuesday, and that one is called Invisible Jobs. It's about the technology jobs that people don't know about. And that's on Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, June 30th. And I didn't mention this before, but we're all in 4 different locations. Corey, I think, is in LA, and Shaun is in Durham, North Carolina, and Joe is in Seattle, and I'm in Orlando. So isn't that a beautiful thing? Thank you very much. I'll let you guys say a few last words to the audience as we say goodbye.
Well, thank you for having us, Luis. It's really fun to talk about this stuff. And now I'm very interested in listening to your next one. Invisible Job sounds really interesting. So hopefully I'll get to tune in too.
Thank you. Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, I had a great time. Anytime. Sorry, I was coming in hot there for a little bit, but I made it in. And as you guys need, I would love to chat anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Shaun?
Same. Thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love getting to do this kind of thing, both because we get cool questions from students, but I also selfishly get to listen to amazing people like Cordy and Joe, which I could do all day. I have no end. There's no end to the list of questions that I have for Cordy. And I hope a takeaway for the folks that are watching is that technology is ubiquitous across everything that we do. And if you're a student right now in any of the technology or digital programs, just the opportunity is boundless. There are so many different ways that you can work with technology to improve whether it's improving the world, solving the world's problems, or bringing a moment of joy to of distracted joy to someone. It's out there for you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna ask you guys to stay a little bit while the audience leave. I'm gonna leave the slide up while we're taking us out. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.